The large investment capital firms like Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, Fidelity, the largest banks in the world, including the central banks, have decided that ESGs are going to be, if you have a high score, according to what their corporate boards have decided, are sound environmental policy. Again, this is people like, we can name individuals like Bill Gates, Larry Fink. I mean, we can name single individuals, very small numbers of them. They get to set what gives you a high score, and that determines whether or not you get investment capital. That determines whether or not you qualify for loans.
Bill Gates is not. In none of my reading did I come across Bill Gates having anything to do with setting these ESG scores. So I don't know what he's talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
Or startup capital. Will determine whether or not, for example, BlackRock will carry your stock. So all of a sudden, BlackRock, which might have bought up already using other people's money, by the way, which you're the stakeholder, but they're doing it for you. That's how that works. It's your money, but now they have a 20% controlling interest in some company, and they come and they tell the company, well, you need to do this. And the company says, well, piss off. And they're like, well, we won't give you investment capital. Like, we'll find it somewhere else. And they'll say, well, we'll sell our 20% share in your stock and just watch your company tank.
This is exactly what happened with Elon Musk and Twitter. It's so bizarre that this is, this is like, yeah, this is how it works. But he's pitching it like it's bad. Well, Elon Musk bought a 9% stake in Twitter.
Yes.
Elon Musk bought a 9% stake in Twitter, so he would have leverage when he wanted to buy the company.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, okay. What he's saying is true, and I do think it is a problem, in that there is this. I guess it's a firm called BlackRock, which has some extraordinary amount of investment capital.
Yeah.
And some extraordinary amount of the percentage of the market in certain markets is controlled by BlackRock. And BlackRock's CEO, Larry Fink, has been very, very vocal and very big on pushing ESG scores. Now, I interpret this, so I guess we're going to have to get into it now. I interpret the ESG scores as a scam because one of the biggest ESG rating agencies, which BlackRock works in conjunction with, is called MSCI. And there's this is where I think it's a shell game. People assume that the ESG score means like, oh, if you have a high ESG score, that means you're a woke company or you're an environmentally friendly company or something. That's how people interpret it. That's not really what the score means. MSCI says that the environmental score doesn't mean, or the environmental aspect of the ESG score, because there's three things that are being measured, that the environmental aspect of the score doesn't measure how green a company is. It measures how likely a company's profits will be impacted by environmental policies put out by the government. Okay. That's a completely different thing. That's a shell game.
Say that one more time.
So the E score, the environmental score and the ESG score under MSCI,
is how regulation will affect your bottom line.
Right. It's not measuring how green a company is. It's measuring how much impact a company's profits will be hit by the environmental policies of the government that the company, organization is located in.
That's calling high fructose syrup sugar.
Right.
Shit right there.
So basically what that means would be if a company, you could have one company that is not pumping sludge into a nearby lake, and it has a score of A+. I know it's not the score, but just for the example. So like an A+ score, not pumping sludge into the lake. You have another company that is pumping sludge, not into a local lake, but is shipping that sludge to be pumped into a lake somewhere across the world, like Lauren was talking about. Okay. They're dumping their trash in some third world country. They would also be rated an A+, because they're not being impacted by the government policies, even though they're still polluting.
Right, because they're doing it in a country that doesn't have any regulation on them.
Exactly. And
they're smart.
Right, and so that's why this whole thing seems like a scam to me, because it's not even saying that the companies are green. It's just saying that the companies aren't going to be impacted by whatever laws the government is pushing right now. And so, well, And so, I mean, I don't know, but this is part of my problem with the conceptualization of this too. I Since the ESG scores do seem like a scam to me. Oh, and there's another issue too, which was that, and I put this on Twitter. So what's weird about this? When I looked at MSCI's website, they have Tesla, so the company that's trying to make electric cars, and they give them the same environmental impact rating as Shell Oil. Okay, the company that's pumping gas into the atmosphere, and they even have on MSCI's website, it has something like, Shell Oil is pumping 800 megatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year or something, and it has Tesla's pumping 20 or something. I assume via factories or whatever. And you're like, you look at that chart and you're like, how the fuck are these labeled the same based on their environmental score? Well, it's because it's not measuring how green the company is. It's measuring how much their profitability is going to be hurt by government regulations, which is a very different metric.
Yeah, hugely.
But this makes me skeptical sort of the claim that James is laying out, because James is kind of looking at ESG scores as this is a conspiracy to have companies like BlackRock and the WEF, basically control these companies to implement like their neo-Marxian future. But then I say, but wait a minute, if the scores are a scam and they don't actually measure the thing they're supposed to measure, I mean, does BlackRock not know that? BlackRock has to know that. I'm assuming he's not a fucking moron. And so I start to think the reason BlackRock is pushing the ESG scores is not because they actually believe in any of this ideology. It's all profit motive. It's
exactly.
all, as Scott Adams says, follow the money. BlackRock has made a business model of claiming that they're the organic investors, that they're only going to invest in, socially conscious companies because that's what people care about right now. And so they sort of bully everyone into this, because BlackRock has sort of dominated the market under this ESG label, then they can sort of bully everyone into doing what they want to do.
Yeah, it's a power grab, definitely.
Right.
But it's a power grab under good old-fashioned capitalism.
Well, that's the thing. It seems like it's all a power grab for money under the thin veneer of social justice and social consciousness.
Right. Yes.
And I think James is saying he thinks the veneer is real.
Right.
And I guess I don't think it is. I think the veneer is fake.
Yeah, I think the veneer is very fake.
Yeah.
So BlackRock is this company, but it's all over the place. Is this managing the net zero transition? That's net zero carbon emissions, right? That's just shorthand for climate change.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I mean, this is kind of the rise of the retail investor too. A lot of these trading platforms, it used to be 20, 30 years ago, if you were going to trade stocks, you had a stockbroker and, you called them up and told them what you wanted to buy and that kind of stuff. Now people can manage their own portfolios and do a lot better than dealing with some third party that's going to, maybe sell you some scam stocks or whatever. So I think with the retail investing market being such a huge deal and people not wanting to invest in, what they perceive as dirty companies, this is kind of a marketing thing that had to come along. Because the money can move around too easily now.
Yeah, no, you're completely correct. And I think, maybe that's what BlackRock, from a greedy financial perspective, which is what I'm assuming their motivation is. Maybe that's what they're looking at. They're saying, oh, people are going to start pulling out their money and investing, privately. So we have to kind of get on the ball here and jump ahead of this under this ESG score scam.
Right.
Which now I do think that the ESG score can lead to negative behaviors from companies. I don't think that's a conspiracy, because first of all, it's really stupid to take something like your environmental impact, your social score, whatever that means, and your governance score, which is like, how your business is run, and you can't combine all these things together to create a single score. That's insane. These are very different issues. And it leads to bizarre situations where you can have companies that, maybe they pollute a lot, but, they hire a lot of, oppressed minorities, right? They put a bunch of oppressed, minorities and LGBTQ plus A helicopters onto various leadership positions to kind of raise the score where maybe their environmental impact would be really shitty or something, so that it averages out and they get a good score. And
it's just terrible.
Right. And I think that's what James is sort of focusing on. And I think this is what's going on. I think James is looking for like the magic bullet here, the smoking gun, about why corporations have become so woke in the last 5 to 6 years. And he thinks it is because of these ESG scores. And he could be right, but it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. It's hard for me to determine, is it the ESG scores and the fact that you can kind of do woke shit to buff your score? Is that's what is pushing companies in that direction? Or were companies already kind of woke because of the culture and now so they're adopting the ESG scores?
Yeah, I think they're following the culture. I've heard a lot of people talk about these ESG scores, but I never really dug in until this came up. People have also been wanting us to talk about the Great Reset stuff, so this is a good combo. But I'm with you. I mean, I think it's just a scam.
Well, yeah, but that's the issue. The ESG score itself does seem like a scam, and I guess the question is it a money scam, or is it an ideological, we want to implement neo-Marxist scam? And I'm leaning a lot more towards money scam right now.
Is the organic labeling a scam? Because I kind of feel like it is, but I've never really looked into whether or not there's any kind of regulation on it.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics about, because I know that some of the organic labels, I believe, are regulated and some aren't. So I don't want to say which one is a scam and which one isn't, but I know a lot of it is. I know a lot of the whole market of, whether something is organic or not is a scam.
The term scam is so loaded. I feel like it's more like a dishonest marketing tactic. But I don't, I mean, obviously, if you're buying companies on a reputable stock exchange, I don't think they're like, fake companies or anything.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that the companies are fake, but the whole idea of investing in companies based on some ideological purposes over making money. Bloomberg has some really good articles where they kind of go over why ESG scores are all bullshit. And they kind of go heavily at criticizing BlackRock's involvement in all this. And they have an interesting video where this guy's kind of interviewing one of the two people who really started the trend in the 60s to invest in companies based on ideological principles. And this all started with, in the Vietnam War, people didn't want to invest in Dow Chemical because Dow Chemical was making napalm for the US government.
Interesting.
And so I forget the name of the two guys, but they kind of created this fund that was about, trying to pick companies based on, social consciousness or whatever. And sort of what they found in their career was that actually the companies that they were choosing ended up doing better than the market on average. And so out of that experiment, I guess, kind of rose this idea that, oh, well, if you choose companies based on moral principles, they'll beat the market, essentially. But the funny thing is that the guy that created that program in the 60s, he says that the ESG scores are all a fucking scam.
Oh, really?
Yes. He says the whole thing, and it's funny because he's like a real big lefty. And he's like, oh, the whole ESG thing is basically just, capitalism stealing this idea from us and then using it for their own purposes.
Right. Yeah.
They call it greenwashing, is what they call it.
Yeah, I remember that. Socially responsible investing, SRI, was the original term before ESG. But yeah, of course, if you can choose, everyone wants to invest socially responsibly, right? I mean, if you can choose,
I don't know if that's true.
I mean, if you can choose the company that's basically giving kids cancer or the company that's not, you're gonna choose.
Well, okay, obviously, if it's that, yeah, but usually it's not that black and white, I mean,
well, it is usually though.
No, it's not. I mean, it's like, okay, you believe in climate change, but yet you still invest in Exxon Mobil or whatever. That's usually the situation.
Oil companies are doing good.
Well, According to ESG scores, they are.
Oh yeah, they're totally environmentally conscious.
Right, right.